Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're digging into a comic that asks a really fascinating question. What happens when you take these classic, old-school superheroes and force them to live in our modern, kind of cynical world? And that really brings us to a huge question, one that's at the heart of pretty much every superhero story being told today. Have we broken them? As our expectations have changed, have we fundamentally changed what it even means to be a hero? All right, let's really dive into this, because this right here, this is the core tension we're going to be exploring. It's this constant, non-stop tug-of-war between the mythic gods they're supposed to be and the flawed, complicated, messy people that we, the audience, demand that they become. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to talk about a term that completely changed the game for superheroes, and that word is deconstruction. So what is it? Well, basically, it's the big shift away from simple good versus evil stories to something, way more complex and a whole lot messier. It's all about taking that myth, that larger-than-life figure, and grounding it in a reality that feels a lot more like ours. And this slide really gets at the core of it. It shows this fundamental change in why a hero even bothers to be a hero in the first place. You see, that classic, straightforward motivation of just doing the right thing, well, that's just not enough for us anymore, is it? Now there has to be some deep internal struggle, some kind of brokenness to make their heroics feel legitimate. And here's why that all happened. We live in pretty complex times, right? We're way more skeptical of simple authority figures. So that pure, simple motivation of the early heroes, to us, it can feel a little quaint, almost arrogant even. We want to know what makes them tick, what personal demons they're wrestling with. But here's the real catch, the crucial point. In this push to make heroes more like us, we risk losing the very qualities that made them super to begin with. The stuff we're supposed to aspire to. And that is the exact problem that an amazing comic series called Black Hammer tackles head-on. All right, so let's see exactly how this plays out. We're going to use the brilliant comic series Black Hammer by Jeff Lemire and Dean Ormston as our main case study. Its whole premise is just this incredibly powerful metaphor for this entire trend of deconstruction. So the series uses this really poignant, honestly heartbreaking analogy. It's like a parent trying to explain to a little kid what happened to their pet. That's how it explains what happened to its heroes after they saved the world in this massive world-ending crisis event. Yep, they've gone to the farm, and this just perfectly illustrates the central metaphor of the whole story. The farm isn't a nice retirement home, not at all. It's the place where outdated, old-fashioned heroes get sent to be forgotten, when the genre decides it just doesn't have a place for them anymore. So, you see, the farm isn't a reward. It's a purgatory. It's this perfect metaphor for how the comics industry itself often just erases its own history with big reboots. It treats these classic characters like problems that need to be solved, all for the perceived greater good of keeping things simple for new readers. And the characters themselves, they're basically living history. Every single one is a really clever homage to a classic hero that the modern genre has kind of left behind. They're the archetypes that have been deemed unsuitable for the kind of stories we tell today. So what happens when you take these mythic, larger-than-life beings and trap them in a totally mundane, relatable life for 10 years? Well, you get a very, very dysfunctional family. Yeah, this whole decade-long experiment in forcing them to be human has pushed every single one of them right to the breaking point. They're all trying so hard to be normal, but it's fundamentally against who they are. And man, the cracks are really starting to show. And the series gets super clever here. It uses these classic family roles, the father, the daughter, the uncle, to really dig into the psychological toll of being stuck there. It just amplifies each character's personal struggle inside this bizarre domestic trap. In the central conflict between Abraham and Gail, wow, it perfectly shows the two possible outcomes of this whole deconstruction thing. On one hand, you've got Abraham's forced, totally unhappy acceptance of their new life. And on the other, you have Gail's just constant, petty rebellion against it because she can't be who she truly is. They're both completely broken, just in different ways. But here's the thing. Black Hammer doesn't just point out the problem. It doesn't just deconstruct everything and leave it in a pile. It actually proposes a way forward, a path from deconstruction to something new. This is where the story makes a huge pivot. It stops being about tearing heroes down and starts being about how to build them back up, but in a way that actually makes sense for today. And that is reconstruction. So what is it exactly? Well, the crucial point here is that reconstruction isn't about just ignoring all the messy, complex stuff we talked about. And it's definitely not about trying to go back to the past. It's about integrating the entire history of these characters with the kind of depth and nuance that modern audiences have come to expect. Really, at its core, reconstruction is this powerful argument for honoring the entire history of the medium, the good and the bad. It's saying, hey, these foundational archetypes, they still have value. We can make them relevant again without erasing what made them great. And what's so cool is how the art itself does this. Dean Ormston's artwork visually achieves the exact same thing the story is arguing for. You can totally feel the history, that golden age vibe in the art style, but it's all filtered through this gritty, modern lens. It is a perfect synthesis of old and new. Okay, so what does all this mean for the future of superheroes? Where does the genre even go from here? What's the next step? The big takeaway here, I think, is that a series like Black Hammer offers a potential blueprint, a roadmap for how to tell really meaningful, resonant hero stories today. It shows us that we don't have to choose between the mythic ideals and the human flaws. We can actually have both. And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. If yesterday's heroes are trapped on a farm, where are today's heroes going to end up? As we keep deconstructing our own modern myths, what kind of farm are we building for them? And what kind of stories will we be telling about them tomorrow?